Elliot and Price hatch a plan to break into Whiterose's bank, while the sudden death of Elliot and Darlene's mom may be just what's needed to bring F Society back together. It's Mr. Robot. 402, payment required.
All my life, I've tried to do what's right.
Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of Mr. Robot. So yes, of course, spoilers are coming your way. And as always, do want to remind you about our quick jump index system. Right in the description below, we'll have this entire review titleized, codified, and time-stamped. You can watch the end of the review first, you can watch the beginning last, you can watch this review in any order you'd like. Alright, so before I get into our review proper, I do want to take a moment for a little confession of sorts. All the way back in Season 1, I find an amusing connection between Philip Price and the toy company Fisher-Price. And for some reason, that seems to have stuck in my head. So very often, when I try to talk about Philip, I use the term Fisher. I didn't even know it beginning in Season 1. It was something I didn't pick up until even later when people kept asking me who I was talking about. And it's something I've tried to be on top of, but I noticed last week I was starting to fall into that. So I'm just going to try and I'm just going to call him Price right now, and hopefully that's going to keep me from making that same mistake. But just again, as an admission, a confession of sorts, if you do ever hear me talk about Fisher, I'm talking about Philip Price. But, I mean, come on, he's kind of a toy for Whiterose, so, I mean, Fisher Price is entirely out of context. Anyway, let's get into the review proper. And as usual, our title is referring to a web error, much like last week's episode 401, 402, another web error code. This one, obviously, as it says, payment required. And this was originally designed to use for systems that used, digital currency and such transactions, microtransactions, basically to let you know that you can't get this content unless it is paid for. It's not a commonly used thing. You don't really see it all that often. It's just kind of reserved because there never ended up being sort of a common classification and use for this. So it's not really something that you often see. But the error code still applicable to this week's episode because payment required is a lot of what this episode is actually about. The price of things. For Philip, for Price, I'm not going to make that error. For Price, that is, of course, the price of what is... Price has to pay the price. I know. It's the price that has to be paid in order to get his revenge. Ends up being, of course, a resignation, the large moves, and all of the prices that he has had to pay in order to get to this particular position. For Elliot, of course, it's more of an emotional price, which is what Mr. Robot clues us into in his little discussion with us this week, is that the loss of his mom, he can't keep holding in and compartmentalizing. It's already what he has been doing. It's been pushing him away from Darlene. It's been isolating him, and it's actually caused him to lose focus. That's how he got sucked into the honey trap last episode. So there is always a price to be paid, even if you don't deal with the emotional consequences of the actions and what goes on around you. So this is what Elliot has to do. And of course, there's a price in time, because it takes Elliot's day in order to go through all of this, which he definitely doesn't want to do. But by the end, it does pay off. So, yeah, price, a very big thing in this episode, which is overall a good episode. It's serviceable. It has its moments, for sure. Some really good ones. One or two not so good ones. But again, a nice serviceable episode. It's set up. We're not getting a lot of the big moves in action. We're just sort of clearing things up, setting our pieces. And like I said, it does very well. I love the whole opening bit that Price does, talking about the history of the Deus group. Beautiful little shots there, starting up from the fall of the Berlin Wall and how they've been behind this secret powerhouse. Nice, done with pictures and overlays and storytelling. That was all very cool. And of course, seeing Elliot having to deal with that emotional price that he has to pay of sort of not being able to push away things anymore, ultimately having to actually admit and deal and again, pay up, accept his emotionals, that he can't just push it all away. And that by doing so, he gets a little stronger, with his sister, which is a nice sort of payoff at the end. So like I said, a good serviceable episode, not a major, action-oriented, not a whole lot of giant big things happening, but still well done with some really nice moments in it. All right, well, let's actually jump in with Philip Price's whole storyline, so I don't make a mistake of calling him Fisher anymore throughout this review. Like I said, he's kind of a major bookend in this episode, while it does end up with a very cool, powerful scene with Darlene and Elliot. Price here, again, sort of filling in the larger movements, the larger moves against Whiterose in with this episode. Again, the beautiful opening bit where we learn the history of the Deus group. That was, again, a very nicely well done sequence. The shot they had of B.D. Wong, the young picture of B.D. Wong that they used for that, it looks so good. He's a good-looking man. He's a good-looking man. I always remember him from Jurassic Park as the scientist. And it's just been amazing over the years to see how much he has done and the amazing work that he has done. I mean, the guy's been working for ages, but it was just, I love the picture that they used. Just, again, so young. And finding out how they've been sort of behind all of the larger motions. First it was the Gulf War, where they took over, got a whole bunch of oil and that power being set in, to actually early seeing about the digital age and the internet, and they thought about the idea of well, why don't we just have people give us all of their information? We'll trade things out, and how you do just get suckered in, and you never read the fine print. You always just hit agree and accept, and you willingly give away all of this information to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and everything else. I mean, we like the likes, come on. I have to admit it. But yeah, so that was kind of a great little sort of summation to see where we were going. And then, of course, ultimately the fact that even for the Deus group, they discover that they are just a pawn being used by Whiterose, who is amassing her own power. Zheng his, Whiterose hers, I guess. Power within, and ultimately she would be the one that would be in charge. So, kind of a cool little summation, catch up to where we are. And then, of course, a beautiful scene of Elliot and Price sort of dancing, in a way, as Price is trying to look at what Elliot's plans are and how much that's not going to work. And, of course, Elliot sort of working to cajole and pull him in and reminding about Angela and everything, and that even maybe you want to do the right thing finally and step up, and then even pulling at the revenge and the threats. I mean, it was just everything that was going on. It was a beautiful sort of back and forth scene. In a way, kind of more exciting by the fact that was entirely a dance. That there wasn't anything that was really happening. There wasn't Elliot wasn't really trying to convince Price of anything. Price was already on board, because like Elliot said at the end of that scene, is if he wasn't in, then we wouldn't be alive right now. Price saved Elliot already. He wants to use Elliot. That whole scene, like I said, is a dance of just seeing how committed are you? How committed am I? Are we going to take this risk? Is it really going to work this way? Should I just have someone come in and kill you right now? There was just a wonderful movement. Just fine acting, fine performances, fine actors feeding off of each other within that. And also the idea that in order to break into this almost impenetrable system, that they're going to need everybody in the Deus group in a room together all at once. I guess that's what they're going to hack into the phones, because the CEOs of companies never have the same phone number for more than 5 days. You're not going to hold on to that. You're not going to have the same number for years or anything. These are big, powerful, important people. They can't keep that, for security purposes. They can't have that information so limited. They've got to keep changing it and moving it over. So the only way to do it is to have them all in the room same at once, so you can hack into all of their information all at once. And this is the downside of this episode to me. because that really feeds into the second scene between Price and Zhang, which, again, a beautifully staged scene, wonderfully acted, very powerful, subtle movements being said with body language and such, great storytelling. But it felt all so contrived. It felt like the ridiculous codes that you need, almost like a Resident Evil game where you've got to get all the 4 or 5 different pieces and codes and plug them into the same wall right here. Or it was like a Bond movie where you've got to get all the heads of, I'm about to say Hydra, that's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But even of that, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we got to go the heads of Hydra in the same room to go ahead and authorize something. It makes things perfectly beautifully evil, but it's also sort of ridiculous. That in order for the next move to happen, we have to have this big impossible act occur. It makes it feel, well, we have set this up as a big giant evil organization. It is. It's like, we need all the members of the Legion of Doom gathered at once in order to approve the next big... It just makes it kind of cheesy. Which is sad because, again, it's a cool scene. Even at the end, when Whiterose grabs the tree and sort of pulls it down in anger and so on. I mean, that's so over the top and overly dramatic. I mean, but you do have the great moments. I love Price walking in. It's like, you're a little unbalanced. The tree, not you. You're extremely unbalanced, not just a little. You know, I mean, there's sort of a fun little play back and forth there. And Price, again, the idea that in order to get this to happen in the small period of time, the 8 days before the shipping occurs and Elliot is dead, that this is the only way, and Price came up with his own resignation. And he sells it very well, the prices that he has had to pay in order to get where he is. He wants to leave with at least a little bit of what he's got left. He plays it very well. It's a wonderfully done scene. It's just, unfortunately, the subject matter of it really made it feel ridiculously over the top and just overly Council of Evil-ish. Now, of course, the emotional meat of this episode has to do with the, of course, sudden call that Elliot gets from Darlene that Mom has died. And so they're going to have to go and collect all of her things. And this is just, well, again, it's a fun emotional journey through of this to see how, you know, the price having to pay to eventually having to deal with these big, heavy things. And you can't just push away and compartmentalize. And things are better afterwards if you do that anyway. There's some just wonderful, great moments of just showing the ridiculousness, showing the frustration that actually both kids have, initially at least, with dealing with all this. The complete lack of connection that they had with their mom. I mean, we have the one lady who's just like, oh, she was so sweet, and she was the shoulder that I was able to cry on, and oh, you guys just must have just felt so good having you as your mom. And they're just like, okay, what do we have to do right here? All of her stuff, donate it, throw it in a box, get rid of it. Done. Even when they do eventually have to go in and start to sort, Elliot's just there, just grabbing stuff and throwing it in the box. Just, okay, we have to put it in the box and put it on the note and put it out there. When they get to the, to pick up the body and everything and have that dealt with, you know, Darlene is having that kind of little moment where she's starting to break. She's been starting to break down with the emotional thought and having to deal with it. And Elliot still is just like, cremation, cardboard box, cheapest urn. Just let it be done. It kept a nice levity to a very powerful emotional kind of sequence of dealing with loss and death and the whole effect that Elliot pushing people away has had on the relationship with he and his sister and Darlene, and how this sort of shared loss forces them to sort of start to deal with these things. Principally when focused around, well, the cassette tape, which we will get to, but of course the safety deposit key. That suddenly Mom might have something that they don't know about, something that might explain away everything, which starts a whole other bit of adventure to go down and get. And the idea that there is nothing in that, not only is there nothing in it, that it has already been disposed of. They do spend this whole time, they finally go, Darlene convinces Elliot to come down, and the fact that, I mean, I think they set it up perfectly right, because there was that bit of frustration, but it's just like, it's gone. Well, payment lapsed 2 years ago and we only keep something for 120 days. It's policy. I mean, there's something that so makes you so powerless against that loss. Not only can you not stop it from being gone, it's been gone for a long time. This is just some haunted key of this thing that used to be there. And oddly enough, while they have lost everything in this box, it's Ecor who runs the bank that has also taken it from them. So, I mean, there's so many different layers of what they've had to deal with, how this is almost a perfect microcosm of their powerlessness at the overwhelming policy and presence of Ecor. Just, there was a certain kind of beauty to that. But that does get us to our nice emotional catharsis scene where, of course, all of this frustration is not really about the safety deposit box. In some ways, it's not even about the loss of mom. It's the fact that Elliot has not dealt with, from a Darlene standpoint, the loss of Angela. And this is where Elliot finally can't do it anymore and does finally sort of break down. It's like, I'm not dealing with it. You know, I haven't been, you know, they sort of kind of have that little bit of cathartic moment, which gets Elliot to start to open up to Darlene and start to sort of deal with all of these issues. And the idea that mom was lonely, that she held this cassette tape about Mother's Day that wasn't even about her. It was for Angela's mom, for Mrs. Moss, that they did this big radio show and so on in appreciation as little kids. And what a great thing for them to sort of deal with and reconnect, is them as children all together doing something fun for a Mother's Day. And even with Elliot, I think there was sort of a perfect, how he did that moment, how they had that set up where he can't listen to the thing. It's too much. It's too emotionally connected with everything that he's going on with. And yet, as Darlene listens to it, he can't help but lean in and listen and start to share that moment and start to open up and relax. I mean, it was just, I think it was a beautifully done sequence. Just how they did this bit, played with the tragedy, played with the humor of the lack of connection and what that could deal with it, but then also the sort of catharsis of that release and sort of reconnecting, which again was just, I think was handled really simply and beautifully. So all of that journey, opening up those emotional wounds, dealing with them, sorting them out, allowing that vulnerability to come in, finally allows us to get to the real point of this story, the real meat between Darlene and Elliot. Again, I talked about the emotional meat of the stuff going on before, but this is where it all pays off, the big serious stuff. And it is, of course, our Scene of the Week for this week. And this is, of course, the Susan Jacobs reveal all the way up into the collection of F Society, the reunion of F Society, and the big final realization. So much happens in this scene, and it works because of all the previous scenes, because all of the build-up and so on, to get Darlene and Elliot into this moment. And the fact that they deal with all of these moments, they deal with all these moments, they deal with all this motion, they deal with all of these different ideas beautifully, succinctly, and in one scene that totally works. I think it's just, again, beautifully done. Again, we get the reveal of Susan Jacobs. We recognize the face. That's from the F Society. That's from S3 or from season 2 when Elliot was in jail. And they had to go in with the whole lawyer bit and ends up being killed because of her relationship with the Jefferson Township work, which, you know, when you find out that this is the lawyer behind the stuff that made your dad die, you know, you get a little upset about it. And the fact that this is the person that Elliot has been going after, this is the key, the connection that Price has given him to get into Cygnus Bank, to get to the bank that Whiterose has all of her money in, just adds a great energy to it. And it's a good confession for Darlene, again, opening this up. And a great moment there when she says, you know, I needed to tell you this, but I wanted to be sure. I was worried, concerned that you would still be, that we would still be okay even if you knew this. I mean, Elliot's done some bad things. Darlene has done some bad things. Honestly, this is minor compared to the whole giant picture. And Elliot can't certainly hold this against her. It's a little frustrating, of course, because she had all the information that Elliot needs. But, you know, Darlene's probably have a few things here and there that will be hopeful. So, I mean, it was, again, sort of a great little moment of confession on that. And then, of course, from there, we have Elliot being forced to say why he needed that information. He's going after the Dark Army. That's insane. That's crazy. You're going after Whiterose? I'm in. Of course Darlene is in. She needs this as much as Elliot does. Elliot has taken all of that angst and anger and frustration with Angela's death and used that to fuel his fight against Whiterose. Whereas Darlene has been treading water and freaking out with nothing to do, to take all of that energy and frustration to go after Whiterose. And the fact that she understands it and pieces it together beautifully right there. It's a nice kind of little bit, I think, between the two. As Darlene starts to talk about Susan Jacobs, Elliot sort of sees the moment and realizes what happens before Darlene even has to finish telling the story. Elliot can know and figure it out. In the same way, Darlene does the same thing with Elliot. Once it finds out what he's doing and what his plans are, she pieces the whole thing together, and that's why she says that I'm in, and you're going to need me. The best work you've ever done, F Society has been with you. So it's perfect. We get the confession, we get the connection, we get everybody on the same page. F Society is back together, and that's when they do the best work. But they add one more thing on top of it. Of course, the drop of the crazy ex-boyfriend that killed Elliot's girlfriend back there in season 1. In his return, but Darlene told him, but not Elliot, not Mr. Robot. We get the reveal of the third personality. Which is what that whole last scene was. Those are the personalities in his head. Remember, when Elliot was going out, he saw his dad personality and his mom personality, his younger self personality. The whole shot in that boardroom at the end, that's the boardroom of Elliot's mind. That's his personality right there. The kid self and the mom self, they're waiting for him to return. But him isn't Elliot, and it's not Mr. Robot. It is a third personality, which means there is one other great mystery we're going to have to sort and solve through this season, as if we didn't have enough things. So yes, all of these big movements, all done beautifully, concisely in one scene. Just marvelous. Now, I don't want to forget to talk about Dominique here, who is having to go into work and deal with the stuff that she has been putting off, and that is the interview about Santiago. And look, this was just some nice redirection. Because I think they play the whole confession, they play the whole interview scene really nicely, where you think that Dom is going to give up the Dark Army, that maybe she's going to make that mistake. That maybe she's going to decide she has to get this off of her chest, that she can't do it anymore. It's been driving her nuts. But no, she doesn't. But I think she uses all of that energy beautifully and rightfully in order to sell the misdirect that Santiago is working for a drug cartel and not necessarily for Whiterose and the Deus Group and a secret giant organization determined to rule the world. Cobra. Oh my God, they're working for Cobra. Anyway, so I think that was a beautifully done scene. I think they set it up very nicely. They played it out very well. They misdirected us as an audience. And then turned it around for the nice reveal at the end. Beautifully done. Nice creepy call with Janice there afterwards to clue in about how everything went as she's working on the taxidermy there at her office. just kind of a crazy sort of setup scene as she's listening to this whole extremist radio about justice back in the day, and then she's getting on Dom there about, well, how sure was it? I mean, 9.9%, I'm not sure if that's quite enough right there. Well, you really did a red letter day, but I want you to try your best. It's like creepy, but supportive, and just, again, marvelously done. And then, of course, wrapped up with the whole crazy lady coming in for taxidermy. I want Beatrice to be with me forever. Just a wonderful whole creep feel to that entire scene. And then topped off with, why maybe 99.99% isn't quite as good. If you're not saying 100%, Janice doesn't want to hear it. Why? Because Agent Horton, there he goes, right over off the building. And beautifully timed, of course, for Janice to text her, sorry about the loss of your coworker there, before she even finds out. The name hasn't even been released, and then, of course, Janice back. 99.99% isn't quite good enough. Let's keep it at 100. Just creepy. It's a beautiful thing. And I have to say, I love Janice. I'm enjoying her. You know, I was hoping Bobby Carnival was going to come back from last season. I really enjoyed him. I think Janice is the new him. This is who we're going to have this season. And she's done a great job. I'm very excited. She does keep it creepy and lighthearted and extremely threatening all at the same time. It's nicely done. And I feel for Dom, totally out of control with what she's having to go through and just trying to keep it together. This is a part I'm really excited to see how it's going to play out. All right, just a couple of small things. One, Mr. Robot reading a Preparing for Your Transition pamphlet at the funeral home is meta in so many different ways. First off, of course, he's dead. He's just a personality. Also, though, it's the final season of the show, so in some ways everybody is dying and will be transitioning forward and onward. So they get a little different layers to it, but I think just on the surface, pretty funny. The subway station where Darlene and Elliot are talking about, you've got to come with me to go get the safe deposit key box and go take a look. You got to be with me. And the scene just ending with the background snowman actually getting up, who I didn't even think was a real person in the background until he moved, which was perfect. Getting up to get on the subway, turning and offering condolences. Condolences on your loss. Just, again, giant snowman, the subway saying that. It's funny and weird. Perfect for the show. So, of course, first thing Darlene does once F Society's back together is to location link both her and Elliot's phones together so they always know where each other are. Yeah, I think that's going to come in handy soon. I think so. I got a small feeling. Agent Horton was obviously not a member of the Dark Army, but I have to say, for a moment, I actually thought that he was. When he was asking Dom, have you gotten enough sleep? You look tired, have you gotten enough sleep? That's the exact wording that Janice used for her. Have you gotten enough sleep? You should get some sleep. You need it for the rest tomorrow. I thought that there was almost a plan and I think that's what made me a little bit more nervous during that scene, is I kept thinking that she was going to try and confess and he was going to be the Dark Army, like, we're going to have to kill your mom if you don't get this straightened up. So, again, another reason why I think that scene was played very well. But, obviously, with the swan dive, not a member of the Dark Army. So, yay? The idea they posit at the beginning of the episode that Deus Corp has created E-Corps as a means to manipulate the public, just to put out products in order for the public to give up more and more of their self-security and information. There is something quite evil about that. It's not even really a real corporation unto itself. It's a front. It's a giant mob front. It's evil. All right, and one last little sort of side note. We almost got some insight into Whiterose's big project, the machine that we're talking about. Though unfortunately not really much more was talked about it outside, as this is Whiterose's next big move, and that's why she's moving it out to the Congo. Last season we dealt a lot with the implication of the time travel might be part of what Whiterose was doing. And I am hoping that that is not something that's totally lost, because I don't know what Whiterose's plan is. We don't know what this machine is, and I'm hoping it's not going to end up being this just sort of mystery bad box that we never really find anything else out about. And I'm hoping the whole time travel idea is not something that it's lost and explained away as just was done last episode to Angela. Let's just face it, you've been conned. I mean, it's not that I think that time travel or anything like that actually sort of works within the tone of this show, but it was something that was really played with last season, and I'd hate to see so much time and effort and storyline implied sort of an idea that was just a ruse and is going to be tossed away. So, like I said, I'm hoping we find out more about Whiterose's machine, what the actual plan and what her big power move to take control of the world all by herself is going to be. I'm just hoping that these concepts and thoughts and ideas that were planted in the last season and so, again, just isn't just dismissed because we're going to wrap things up now. So, just a personal thought there. All right, well, I think I've gone ahead and talked long enough. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up for now. Thank you so much for joining me with this review. So next week, hopefully we're going to get some movement going forward. Whiterose has to get all of the Council of Evil gathered together, and we've got to figure out what's going on with Bira. Is he going to play a big role going forward? Is he just going to be distraction for Elliot? And who is this big third personality? A lot of things to sort through. I'm just hoping we're going to get some bigger movement going forward starting next week. 13 episodes in this, still a lot of time, but also not really a lot of time. Anyway, so let's wrap things up for now. Thank you again for joining me. And if you enjoyed this review, please go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, throw those right down in the section below. What you guys think about this episode? What you think about the emotional sorting that Elliot had to do? All the prices that had to be paid? And let me know what you guys think about the whole Council of Evil. Is that a little contrived? Does it work perfectly for you? Let me know your thoughts. Throw those down in the section below. You can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. Hit this button to subscribe. We'll throw up a couple of our previous videos right here to check out, and I think that's going to be it. So, thanks once again. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.